Howdy! So I decided to actually do a second video this week. So, bonus vlog. Before I begin, if you've watched my previous videos at all recently, you'll probably have noticed a trend. So you'll see this coming a mile away. Disclaimer. I am not a professional, and I am not trained or certified in any way, shape, or form on the subject I'm about to elaborate upon. I am self-educated, with anecdotal and observational occurrences being my primary form of knowledge on the subject. So, forgive me if any of this is factually inaccurate, because I have no formal education on the matter. That being said, I want to talk about guns. Funds. Guns? Did I say funds? Or guns? Guns. Anywho, a lot of you might know that I am a particularly left-hanging, liberal type person when it comes to politics and sociopolitics, economical politics, all that kind of stuff. But that being said, I am a pretty avid supporter of firearms, and the general ownership of firearms by the general populace. I could make an entire other video as to why I feel that way, but that is a completely other topic in and of itself. That being said, there is a lot of what I would consider misconceptions about firearms that most general people in the populace don't understand, or that just get confused or misguided by the media, or even their own family, or even their own, teachers for that matter. One thing a lot of people don't realize is that teachers are just as prone to bias as anyone else. They're just as human. So, the main topic I want to talk about is motive firing. A lot of people seem to think that semi-automatic firearms as a mechanism are only made for killing, and that only the military has access, or should have access, to semi-automatic firearms. So I just want to dispel that right now. Most firearms made within the last 20 or 30 years, probably even further back than that, really, are semi-automatic. It's the most common firing mechanism for a firearm. The only firing types that are slower are bolt action and breech loaders. There's not really any other slower types. I suppose there's some fringe firearms that are chamber fed, so you only put one round in the firearm and that's all you can fit because it just has no magazine. Akin to cannons, I suppose. But most other firearms are semi-automatic. which usually means they have a magazine of some capacity that fires multiple rounds at the general speed that someone can pull the trigger. And the argument seems to be that this is simply too lethal as far as something that is owned by the general public. And that might be true, actually. Because it can be fired as fast as someone can pull the trigger. And in some cases, depending on the firearm, depending on the upkeep of the firearm and the, skills of the operator, that might be faster than automatic. That might be functionally quicker than the mechanism that actually operates a fully automatic firearm. I'm probably wrong, and there's probably not very many cases of that actually being true. But, yeah, that's still a possibility. A lot of people assume that these semi-automatic firearms, these rifles, these carbines and whatnot that are being used in a lot of these shootings and massacres and stuff, they assume that these are the most common weapons used by murderers and terrorists. And even within our own country, that's not the case. The most common weapons used by murderers and, domestic terrorists in our country are usually knives and IEDs. That's just, it's ridiculous to think that, everyone can just get their hands on these, firearms, which they kind of can. Semi-automatic firearms are so common and so normal that is the standard gun. So it comes with the standard paperwork. But, I mean, people still have to go do a background check. The background checks might not be as strict as they should be. They might not be as rigorous as they should be. But people usually still have to get those. The only way to bypass that shit is to go to a pawn shop or to go to a gun trade or a gun fair and find someone who's just sketchy enough to allow you to purchase the firearm without any of that stuff. And yeah, that can be just as plenty as you would expect it to be. But it's illegal. Like, people want gun control to be this huge thing where, it's illegal this and it's illegal that, and that doesn't help anyone, because the people who are breaking the rules are already breaking the rules. They don't care. And it's a perpetuated argument, but anywho, moving on a bit, digressing, magazine size is another thing. To the common person, magazine size is the scariest thing about firearms. Most people that you ask with no education of firearms are going to say that they don't understand why a firearm needs more than 1 to 6 rounds in its immediate chambering abilities. Generally speaking, if someone owns a firearm that has more than 6 round capabilities, it's probably for personal defense, not terrorism. Because in a home invasion situation, or God forbid a standoff against a domestic terrorist or just enemy combatant of some kind, you can't afford to only have a 6-round magazine or a 6-round cylinder. It just doesn't work that way. It's not going to help you enough. Reloading takes a really long time in the course of a gunfight. It might only take a professional, 1.5 seconds or even less than that, because they're, super trained on the matter. But the general public, the standard operator, is not going to be able to perform that fast, and especially not under pressure and trauma. So, as a little example, I don't actually have my firearm with me today because I have a buddy working on it for me, doing a little project of mine. This is a magazine for a Ruger 1022. A 22 is generally considered to be a weapon that is too small to be effective for killing someone. And it's just for fun, it's just for plinking, it's a child's gun. Here's the kicker. This little brick right here holds 10 rounds. 10. And with an effective operator, a trained operator who knows what they're doing, has good accuracy, that's 10 potential kills on enemy combatants. Or, in the hands of a domestic terrorist who's equally trained, 10 potential lives lost. And I don't mean to make that distinction, because lives lost are lives lost. It doesn't matter who they are, what side there are. A life lost is a life lost. But that's the most basic firearm that most people are aware of. This is standard. This is the regular shit. This is vanilla. So when people are getting scared about these AR-15s and all these other semi-automatic rifles and shit like that, it's just baffling, because it just shows a clear ignorance of firearms and the culture and the community of the industry of firearms. It's baffling, really, how little people actually know about firearms. Cause yeah, like it's been like this, and it's only a problem when a shooting comes up, and nobody wants to blame it on the people who actually shot other people, who had the mental instability to kill another human being just for the sake of doing it, or because of biases or whatever. No, we blame the firearms. And now moving on a little bit. So that was a 10-round magazine for the most basic of firearms, the vanilla firearm, if you will, or what I consider it to be. It's pretty close. Most people would agree. This is a 35-round magazine. So, holding 5 more rounds than your typical AR-15 magazine. And I guess that's usually the extended magazine, because I guess a typical AR-15 magazine is only 10 rounds, but this holds 5 more rounds than an AR-15 magazine, the one that most people would use. Now, the rounds are smaller, and they're less lethal. It's almost proven. But in the hands of the right operator, who's fairly skilled, it's just as many kills. So, high-capacity magazines, it just is. Give you a little bit of a point of reference. That is a 10-22 bullet, or a 22 long rifle bullet. Round, actually. The bullet's just the tip. To find something to compare that to, this is a tin for Altoids Smalls. And that round fits very comfortably in that tin. And I could probably, let's actually see how many of these I could fit in here. But yeah, the magazine size is really, really basic. It's not something that's exclusive to these large rifles. And that's the other thing, is that a AR-15 doesn't have a lot bigger round. It really doesn't. A 5.56 or 223, depending on, civilian or whatever version, isn't a lot bigger at all. It'll do a lot more damage. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't take a whole lot in the world of ballistics for a round to do more damage. But yeah. It's just not, it's a non-issue as far as the problem that we're looking for. It looks like I probably can't fit another one in there. But it looks like we've got 11 rounds. Well, actually, hold on. I can probably double stack these now that I look at it. Yeah, I can definitely double stack these. Alright, so that is there's 21 rounds of 22 ammunition. That is over half of this magazine. Just in this little Altoids tin. So, I kind of feel like people just don't really understand that it's not an exclusive issue to a certain gun, that it's the entire industry. It's the entire populace of these firearms. These are basic firearms that people use, that people own, and there's literally millions of people in the United States that have firearms just like this, and even more dangerous firearms, really. So what's to keep people from killing each other all the time? Why aren't we hearing about it on the news? Why aren't we acclimated to, just brush it off as if it's not a big deal at this point? Well, because it doesn't happen. We do have gun violence, more than almost any other country. But it's not something that happens day to day. It's not something that everyone is going out and doing. And yes, gun access is definitely part of the problem, because people get their hands on them way too easily. But it's not because of the firearms. It's not the firearms' fault. And people are just so afraid of something they don't understand that the firearms aren't scary, it's the people who are using them. This isn't a firearm. This is a toy. And you might be thinking, that's a pretty convincing toy. But that's just the assumptions people make. People are so afraid of firearms at this point that they assume so quickly about all of it. I don't blame you if you did think this was a real firearm, because I've convinced a lot of people that it's a real firearm. I actually hand weathered this thing to look like a real firearm. This is not how I bought it. This is approximately the same size as a real firearm. This has similar features to a real firearm, but it's not a real firearm. It's just a dinky little airsoft pistol. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that people should educate themselves more about the things that they criticize before they criticize them. Because it doesn't take a lot of digging to realize that firearms are not only ingrained in our culture, but ingrained in our world and our society at this point. This is not strictly an American problem as far as firearms goes. It's strictly an American problem as far as mental illness goes. We don't have a good health industry. We don't have a good medical plan as far as a nation goes. We started doing, free healthcare not too long ago, but look how much it's helped. Not a whole lot. And I don't mean that to criticize those who have spent so much and invested so much in that system, but to really have effective healthcare, we need it to be truly free and truly accessible to everyone. And that's gonna come with mental health as well. Mental health should be something that we are checking at infancy, at toddler age, at, every step of the ladder. Children shouldn't even be in school if they don't check basic psych evals. And you can say, well, they're not, mature enough to understand it, but they have to be. You can't have, screaming little psychopaths running around with everyone else's children. And I say that realizing that I probably went to school with, at least a handful of people that were mentally unstable and, mentally unfit to be amongst the general populace. But they just slipped through the cracks because our mental health industry is so poor. We don't prop it up as a high priority, and it should be a high priority. It should be a much higher priority than making sure that people who own these are forced to use these. And it should definitely be a higher priority than making sure that no one can own a firearm. Not that anyone's really saying that, because that's never really been on the table, and it is quite literally impossible to take away every firearm owned by an American citizen. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles. We need better health care for people who are mentally unsound. We need to be able to identify them, and we need to be able to help them, because psychopaths slip through the crack all the time. America's full of them. In fact, at this point, it seems like we praise them. They become celebrities more often than not. Hell, we have one of them running for our for the office to be the leader of our country. Possibly two. Possibly more than that. You know, these people are in power even right now as we speak amongst our Congress and councils. And there's nothing we can really do about it now, but you know, if we start implementing these systems, these checks, these, you know, maybe we can get ourselves turned around so that we can have these things stop happening as much. Maybe stop happening at all. That'd be nice. I don't believe anyone really needs a firearm. But need isn't something that America is terribly familiar with. We've always been familiar with what people want. And what people want is usually firearms. And that's not because people want to kill other people. Nobody really wants to kill other people unless they're mentally unsound. But people are naturally afraid, and they're quick to suspect other people as potential enemies. And it's okay to give in to that natural fear and to prepare yourself for that. Because if someone is not mentally unsound, and they do find a firearm or a weapon with which to harm other people with, it really doesn't hurt anyone if just one other person happens to have the means to stop them before any serious damage is done. Not that I'm saying the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, but a bad guy with a gun certainly does a lot of damage if there's no one there to stop them. So, that about wraps this up. I just wanted to talk a little bit about firearms and, you know, maybe offer some perspective, if nothing else. Hopefully, people won't be so ignorant in the future. But, ignorance is bliss, am I right? Until next time.